The banquet hall smelled like candle wax and prime rib, and every face I'd known my whole life was turned toward me. Aunt Carol. My cousin Denise, who used to braid my hair when I slept over just to get out of that garage for one night. The Whitmores, our old neighbors from 3 houses over. Gerald Marsh, my father's old business partner, who'd once told me I had more sense than the rest of this family combined, and never explained what he meant by it. His wife Diane sat beside him, already refilling her wine. And my mother, standing under the string lights with a microphone she hadn't been asked to hold, looking at me the way she'd looked at me my entire life, like I was a problem she'd already solved. Evelyn, her voice carried. She wanted it to carry. You've always been the strong one. Adam needs us more than you ever did. Somebody's fork hit a plate. I heard Adam shift in his chair behind me, that particular silence he does so well, the one where he lets other people say the ugly things so his hands stay clean. I didn't cry. I want you to understand that, because for 41 years crying was the only card I had, and it never once worked. I just looked at the folder in my hand, the one I'd carried into that hall like it was nothing. Like it was just paper. It wasn't just paper. You're right, I said. I have always been the strong one. My mother smiled. That soft, satisfied smile she gets when she thinks she's won something. It didn't last. I'm not going to tell you what happened next yet. You need to understand how we got here first, how a family teaches a daughter that love has a price and then acts shocked when she finally stops paying it. Welcome back to Calm Drama Chronicles, the channel for real family stories about justice, boundaries, and the moments people finally stop staying quiet. Before we get into it, if this sounds like your kind of story, hit subscribe, because this one is one of the hardest I've ever told. But to understand any of it, you have to go back further than that hall. 2 months before that banquet, before any of this started, I was just living my life, the way I always did. My name is Evelyn Brooks. I'm 41 years old, and I design commercial interiors for a living. Restaurants, boutique hotels, the lobby of a bank downtown that a Fortune 500 magazine once photographed for a feature on Midwest architecture. I own a townhouse in the Field Club neighborhood of Omaha with hardwood floors I refinished myself, and a guest room I've never once had to give up. Nobody handed me any of it. I built a business from a card table in a studio apartment, invoiced clients at midnight, learned to negotiate contracts by getting overcharged twice and never letting it happen a third time. By 35, I had a staff of 6. By 40, I'd stopped checking my bank account out of anxiety and started checking it because I liked what I saw. People assume that kind of independence comes from confidence. Mine came from something else. It came from learning, very young, that if I wanted anything, safety, comfort, a locked door, I was going to have to build it myself because nobody was going to hand it to me. I call my parents every other Sunday, not weekly, every other. It took me years to notice I'd set that rhythm on purpose, a buffer just wide enough that I could love them from a comfortable distance. My mother has never once asked me why. That's where it started. A Sunday dinner at my parents' place in Elkhorn. Same table, same seating, my father at the head, my mother beside him, Adam across from me, like we were still kids being served portions that were never quite equal. Adam's thinking about opening a second location, my mother said, spooning green beans onto my father's plate before her own. The first shop's doing so well. Adam's coffee shop had opened 18 months earlier. I'd heard doing so well every month since, and every month the story shifted slightly. A slow season, a supplier issue, a manager who didn't work out. That's great, I said, because it's what you say. He'll need some help getting the second location off the ground. My mother didn't look at me when she said it. She looked at the green beans. You know how banks are with a second business loan. I don't actually, I said. I've never needed one. My father set down his fork. Because we helped you when you started out, Evelyn. That wasn't true, and we all knew it wasn't true, but nobody at that table had ever corrected my father in his own house. I appreciate everything you did, I said carefully, but I financed my studio myself. The equipment loan was mine. The lease was mine. You had our support, my mother said. Emotional support counts. Adam hadn't said a word. He never has to. He just sat there, eating, letting the conversation happen around him like weather. What kind of help does Adam need? I finally asked. Because someone had to say it out loud. My mother's eyes lit up like I'd finally understood the assignment. We were hoping you'd consider it, she said. You're so good with money. I looked at my brother, 38 years old, a grown man who let his mother negotiate his finances at Sunday dinner because it had always worked before. I'm good with money, I said slowly, because nobody ever gave me any. The table went quiet the way it always does when I say something true. I need to tell you about the garage, because you won't understand anything that happens next without it. When I was 6, my parents converted our detached garage into a bedroom, insulation, a window unit, a second-hand bed frame. They told me it was temporary, that Adam and I would trade rooms every few months, fair and square. We never traded. Adam kept his bedroom. He also got the room next to it. First a playroom. Then, once he hit middle school, a private study with his own television. I slept 14 feet from the driveway, with a space heater that clicked all night, and a lock on the door that was really just a latch, the kind that couldn't keep out weather, let alone anything else. I was 11 the first time I asked why. Because you're the strong one, my mother said, folding laundry, not even glancing up. Adam needs more from us. You've never needed as much. I didn't understand at 11 that this sentence was going to define my entire life. I just understood that the answer to why do I sleep in the garage was because you deserve it less. Dressed up in kinder words. I stayed in that garage until I was 16 and got a job specifically so I could save for a used car and stop needing my parents' permission to disappear on weekends. By then, the arrangement had stopped being something anyone apologized for. It had just become the shape of our family. Evelyn manages. Adam is managed for. Nobody in my family has ever once said the word sorry about the garage. Not my mother, not my father. To them, it wasn't cruelty. It was logistics. I used to think I'd made peace with that. Sitting at that dinner table, watching my mother ask me, again, to hand something over so Adam could keep having 2 rooms while I had none. I understood that I hadn't made peace with anything. I'd just gotten quieter about the war. I'm not co-signing a loan for Adam, I said. My mother's face did something I'd never seen it do before. Not hurt, not anger. Something colder. Recalculation. Nobody's asking you to hand him a check, my father said. It's a signature. A formality. A signature that makes me legally responsible if his second shop fails the way the first one's about to. I looked at Adam. Is it about to fail? It's not failing, Adam said, too fast. Not failing, Adam said too fast. Then he doesn't need my name on anything, I said. My mother set her fork down with a small, precise click. We are asking you, she said, because you're the only one in this family with the means to help. That's not a burden, Evelyn. That's a privilege. Some people would be grateful to be needed. I've been needed my whole life, I said. I slept in a garage because you needed the space for him. I don't think I owe this family anything else. The silence after that was different from every silence that had come before it. It had a temperature. That garage kept a roof over your head, my father said, quiet and hard. Don't act like we abandoned you. I'm not saying you abandoned me, I said. I'm saying you decided, when I was 6 years old, that my comfort came second. And you're still deciding it. You just call it something else now. My mother's mouth tightened into the exact shape it used to make right before she'd send me back out to that garage with an extra blanket instead of an apology. "So that's your answer," she said. "No." "That's my answer," I said. "No." Adam looked at his plate the entire time. He didn't defend me. He didn't defend himself. He just let it happen, the way he'd let everything happen for 38 years, because being protected had never once required him to speak. I drove home that night with my hands too tight on the wheel, telling myself I'd finally done it. I'd finally said no, and the world hadn't ended. I didn't know yet that my parents don't accept no. They just find a way around it. The call came 4 days later. Not from my mother. From a title company in Douglas County I'd never heard of. "We're finalizing a deed transfer and need to confirm your identity," the woman said. "You're listed as a notified heir on the original probate filing, so any change to the deed requires we confirm with every listed party before it's finalized. My grandmother's lake cabin." I recognized the parcel the second she read it off. The one she'd always said, quietly, at every holiday since I was a teenager, would someday be split between me and Adam. The one piece of that family that had ever felt like it might actually be mine. "There's no update needed," I told the woman on the phone. "I'm not selling anything. According to our file," she said, "the power of attorney on record authorized the full transfer to Adam Brooks as of last spring." I sat down very slowly on my own kitchen floor. "What power of attorney?" She read me a date. 5 years old. My father's knee surgery. The one where I'd signed a stack of papers so someone could manage his affairs for 2 weeks while he recovered. Papers I'd been told covered his medical bills and nothing else. They'd used it. Years later. For something I never agreed to on a document I'd signed to help him, not to sign away anything of mine. I called my mother with my voice shaking in a way I hated. "You gave Adam the cabin." A pause. Then, calm as anything. "We were going to tell you eventually, Evelyn. He needed it more than you did." There it was again. The same sentence. The same math. 35 years apart, and nothing had changed except the size of what they were taking. "You used a medical power of attorney," I said, "to sign away something that was supposed to be mine." "It was never officially yours," my mother said. "It was never officially anyone's until we decided." I hung up before she could hear what that did to me. I sat on my kitchen floor for a long time that night, staring at nothing, understanding for the first time that this wasn't about a cabin, and it had never been about a loan. It was about whether my family believed I was owed anything at all, and I finally had proof of exactly how far they were willing to go to make sure the answer stayed no. If I refused to be the family's sacrifice one more time, I needed to know exactly how far they'd already gone to make sure I never had a choice. I didn't sleep that night. I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop open and a legal pad I hadn't touched since I redid a contract dispute for a client 2 years back. And I made myself do the one thing I'm actually good at. I stopped feeling. I started building a file. By 8 the next morning, I had the title company on the phone again, this time asking for something specific, not a records update, a copy of the actual power of attorney document my signature was on. "I can send that over," the woman said. "Give me a few minutes." It came through as a PDF 20 minutes later. 4 pages. I read it twice before I let myself believe what I was looking at. The document authorized my father's medical decisions and medical billing only, for a period not to exceed 30 days following his surgery 5 years ago. Nothing about property. Nothing about real estate. Nothing that could have legally touched my grandmother's cabin. Which meant somewhere between that hospital paperwork and a title company in Douglas County, somebody had either misrepresented what that document allowed, or somebody at that office had let it slide because my father told them it was fine. I called my mother with the PDF open on my screen. "I have the actual power of attorney in front of me," I said. "It says medical decisions. 30 days. Nothing else." There was a pause just a little too long to be innocent. Your father handled the paperwork with the cabin, she said. I wasn't involved in the details. Someone was involved in the details, Mom. Someone had to be because this document doesn't cover what you used it for. I don't see what difference it makes now, she said. It's done. It makes a difference to me, I said, because it means you didn't just decide to give Adam something that was supposed to be mine. You used a legal document under false pretenses to do it. That's a very serious accusation, Evelyn. It's a very serious accusation, Evelyn. It's a very serious document, I said, and hung up before she could turn it into something I'd said wrong. I called my Aunt Carol 2 days later, mostly because I needed to hear one person in this family say I wasn't crazy. Oh, honey, she said, and something in her voice made my stomach drop before she even finished the sentence. I heard you weren't going to help Adam with the loan. That's not exactly. Your mother's pretty upset about it, Carol said. She said Adam's business might not make it without some support, and you turned him down flat. I sat very still. Did she mention the cabin? A pause. What cabin? She didn't know. Of course she didn't know. My mother had told an entire branch of the family that I was the one refusing to help and left out the part where they'd already taken something from me to help him anyway. There's a group text, Carol added, gently, like she was trying to warn me instead of wound me. Your mom's been keeping everyone updated. I think she's worried people will think badly of Adam if his shop closes. She's worried about how it looks, I said, not about Adam. Evelyn, I'm not the villain in this, Carol. I promise you that. I never said you were, she said. But she didn't say I wasn't either, and that silence told me everything about which version of this story was already winning. I tried one more time to fix it the right way. I drove out to Elkhorn with an actual plan, not a check, a plan. I'd talked to a colleague who restructures small business debt for a living. I had a name, a number, a real path for Adam that didn't put my name on anything. My mother looked at the folder like it was an insult. You want him to go to a stranger, she said, instead of helping him yourself. I want him to get real help instead of a Band-Aid, I said. This person can actually fix his cash flow. I can't. I design lobbies, Mom. I don't run coffee shops. You could cosign, my father said, like the conversation hadn't moved at all. That's what family does. I offered you something better than a signature, I said. You don't want better. You want obedience. My mother's face went tight. That's an ugly thing to say to your parents. It's an honest thing, I said. You didn't ask me for help. You asked me to comply. Those aren't the same and you've never once seen the difference. Nobody took the folder. I left it on the table anyway and drove home with both hands finally steady on the wheel because for the first time, I understood I wasn't going to win this by being reasonable. Reasonable had never been the actual test. The following week, one of my longest clients, a restaurant group I'd worked with for 6 years, called to check in before our next project kickoff. Something in her voice was off. Everything okay? I asked. I got a strange call, she said carefully, from a woman who said she was your mother, asking if I could maybe put some work Adam's way. Apparently he does some woodworking. She mentioned you two were going through something and she wanted to help him find other income. My face went hot. She called you directly? She found me through your website, I think. I told her I'd think about it, mostly to be polite. A pause. Evelyn, is everything all right? My mother had gone around me. Into my business. Into a relationship I'd spent 6 years building, one careful invoice at a time, and used it as another lever to pull for Adam. Everything's fine, I said, because I wasn't ready yet to explain what wasn't. I'll handle it on my end. I called Adam that night, shaking. He answered on the second ring, and for once, he sounded tired instead of easy. I didn't know she was going to call your client, he said. I swear, Evie. Did you know about the cabin? Silence. Longer than it should have taken to say no. I knew something happened with the paperwork, he said finally. I didn't ask questions. I figured if Mom and Dad said it was fine, it was fine. That's the whole problem, Adam. You never ask questions. You just take what gets handed to you. He didn't argue with that. He just went quiet again, and for the first time, the quiet didn't feel like comfort. It felt like guilt with nowhere to go. You could tell them to stop, I said. You could tell them the Chapin wasn't right. And then what, Evie? I lose the only support I've got left. You built your own thing. I never learned how. If I push back on them, I've got nothing to fall back on. You have nothing to fall back on because they never made you build anything, I said. That's not my fault, and it's not going to become my problem either. He didn't call me back after that. 3 days of silence from my own brother, and somehow that silence hurt worse than anything my parents had said out loud. A few days later, I found the name in an old birthday card of my grandmother's, tucked in a drawer. Thomas Whitfield, attorney at law. The man who'd handled her estate before she passed 6 years ago. I called on instinct, not expecting much. He remembered me immediately. Your grandmother spoke about you often, he said. I still have the file if you'd like to see it. She was very specific about her wishes. 2 days later, I sat across from him in an office that smelled like old paper and coffee, reading a copy of my grandmother's original trust instructions. The cabin was to be held jointly, equally, between Evelyn Brooks and Adam Brooks, with no provision, none, for one sibling to receive it outright. This isn't what happened, I said quietly. I assumed as much, Whitfield said, given your call. Your father requested an early informal transfer a few years back. I advised against it. He proceeded through a different office. Why didn't you say something? I wasn't retained to police your family's decisions, Ms. Brooks. Only to execute your grandmother's. He hesitated. For what it's worth, she asked me something once, near the end. She wanted to know whether it was too late to change things, to make sure you were looked after the way she felt you hadn't been. My throat closed. What did you tell her? I told her it wasn't too late. She said she'd handle it herself. He looked almost apologetic. I don't know if she ever did. The following Saturday, I found out I hadn't been invited to my cousin Denise's engagement dinner. Denise, who used to sneak into the garage and sleep beside me on the floor so I wouldn't be out there alone. Denise, who I'd assumed was still in my corner. I texted her. She took 6 hours to answer. Your mom said things were tense right now and it might be easier for everyone if it was smaller. I'm sorry, Ev. I didn't know what to say. That same afternoon, my client called again, this time to say she'd decided to hold off on the new project. No real explanation given. I knew exactly what had actually happened. I just didn't have proof yet. I sat in my car outside my own office, gripping the steering wheel, feeling something I hadn't let myself feel since I was a kid, staring at a garage door that never once opened into the rest of the house. I was losing my family, piece by piece, for refusing to keep doing what had already cost me everything once. I thought about calling my mother and taking it all back, telling her I'd co-sign whatever she wanted, that she could have the cabin, that I'd sign anything if it meant Denise texted me first instead of last, if it meant my own client trusted me again. For one long, humiliating minute, I actually reached for my phone to do it. Then I thought about the space heater clicking on and off all night when I was 11 years old, and how giving in had never once bought me anything except permission for it to happen again. I put the phone down. My phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Ms. Brooks, this is Thomas Whitfield's office. Mr. Book, this is Thomas Whitfield's office. Whitfield asked me to send something along. He found it while going through older estate files. A sealed letter your grandmother left, addressed to you specifically. He wasn't sure it was ever delivered. I opened the email right there in my car. A scanned page, my grandmother's handwriting, dated less than a year before she died. Evelyn, if you're reading this, it means I never found the courage to say it to your face. I know about the garage. I knew for years and said nothing, and that silence is the biggest regret of my life. I want you to know the truth was never hidden from this family. It was buried by people who couldn't survive looking at it directly. Everything I have is meant to be equal between you and your brother because you have always deserved equal. Please don't let them convince you otherwise. I read it 3 times before I could breathe normally. Every memory I'd spent 35 years quietly doubting, wondering if I'd exaggerated it, softened it, been an unfair child holding a grudge, had been true the entire time. Documented. Witnessed. Regretted by someone who'd loved me enough to write it down and never brave enough to say it out loud while she was alive. If the truth had been on my side all along, I sat there asking myself, why had my family spent 35 years making sure I was the only one who doubted it? I wasn't done being hurt. But for the first time since that dinner table in Elkhorn, I wasn't afraid anymore either. I didn't call my mother after I read my grandmother's letter. I called a real estate attorney instead. Her name was Renata Cole, recommended by a client who trusted me enough not to ask why I needed her. I laid it all out on her desk: the medical power of attorney, the title company records, my grandmother's actual trust instructions, the letter. She read through it twice, slower the second time. "This transfer shouldn't have gone through," she said. "The authorization doesn't cover it. You'd have solid grounds to challenge it." "I don't want a lawsuit," I said. "I want the record corrected. I want it to exist somewhere that isn't just my memory." She nodded like she understood exactly what I meant, which surprised me, because it had taken me 35 years to understand it myself. "I can file a formal notice disputing the transfer," she said. "It won't undo anything overnight, but it puts the truth on paper, permanently, whether your family likes it or not." "Do it," I said. For the first time since that dinner table in Elkhorn, I wasn't reacting to something my parents had done to me. I was building something they couldn't quietly take back. The invitation came in the mail a week later. Cream cardstock, my mother's handwriting on the envelope, like nothing had happened at all. "Please join us in celebrating 40 years of marriage. Leonard and Patricia Brooks." A banquet hall downtown. Extended family, old neighbors, my father's business partners, the whole audience they'd always performed for. I almost didn't go. Then I thought about Denise texting me 6 hours late, about my client quietly pulling a project, about how carefully my mother had spent 2 months making sure everyone believed a version of me that didn't exist. I thought about the folder sitting on my kitchen table, the letter, the trust documents, the copy of the misused power of attorney Renata had already filed a formal dispute against. I wasn't going to that party to make a scene. I was going because I was done letting other people write the ending to my own story. I put the folder in my bag the morning of the party and told myself, over and over, that whatever happened in that room, I would leave it having finally told the truth out loud, in front of the only people who'd spent 35 years insisting it wasn't true. The banquet hall smelled like candle wax and prime rib, and every face I'd known my whole life was turned toward me. Aunt Carol, in the blue dress she wears to everything. My cousin Denise, who caught my eye for half a second and then looked away. Guilty. The Whitmores, our old neighbors, 2 tables over. Gerald Marsh, my father's business partner, still repeating that line, about me having more sense than the rest of the family. Still not explaining what he meant. His wife Diane, seated beside him. Adam found me near the gift table before dinner even started. "Please," he said quietly. "Whatever's going on with you and Mom, can it just wait until after tonight? It's their 40th. Don't ruin it." "I'm not here to ruin anything," I said. "I'm here because I was invited." He didn't look convinced. He never does when the truth doesn't come with a warning label attached. Dinner passed the way these things always do. Toasts, old photos on a slideshow, my father getting emotional about a marriage that had, by every visible measure, worked. Then my mother stood, took the microphone nobody had handed her, and smiled at the room like she already owned whatever came next. "I want to thank my children," she said, "for everything they've given this family. Her eyes found mine, especially Evelyn. The room turned toward me the way rooms do when someone's about to be complimented or destroyed, and everyone in that hall had learned by now which one it usually was with her. Evelyn. Her voice carried. She wanted it to carry. You've always been the strong one. Adam needs us more than you ever did. Somebody's fork hit a plate. I heard Adam shift in his chair behind me, that particular silence he does so well. I didn't cry. I just looked at the folder in my hand. You're right, I said. I have always been the strong one. My mother smiled, satisfied, already moving to hand the microphone off. It didn't last. I've been the strong one, I said, since I was 6 years old and you decided I'd handle the garage better than Adam would. The room went still in a way I'd never heard a room go still before. Evelyn, my father started. You gave a toast about 40 years of building a family, I said. I'd like to tell everyone what that family actually looked like from the garage. My mother's smile was gone completely now. This is not the time. You made it the time, I said, when you decided to say that sentence in front of everyone instead of to me privately, like you have every single time you needed an audience to make me feel small. I opened the folder. This is a medical power of attorney I signed 5 years ago so Dad could recover from surgery without worrying about his bills. It authorized medical decisions for 30 days. It says nothing about property. I held it up, not shouting, just steady. It was used anyway to transfer my grandmother's cabin to Adam without my knowledge, without my consent. A murmur went through the tables. Gerald leaned toward Diane. This is the actual trust my grandmother left, I continued, pulling the second page free. It says the cabin was meant to be split equally between me and Adam, not given to whoever needed it more. Equally. Evelyn, that's enough, my mother said. But her voice had lost the thing it always used to have, that absolute certainty that the room belonged to her. And this, I said, my hands steady even though my chest wasn't, is a letter my grandmother wrote me before she died, and never found the courage to send. She knew about the garage. She knew for years. She said the truth was never hidden in this family. It was buried by people who couldn't survive looking at it directly. I looked at my mother, then my father. You've always been the strong one, I said quietly. Adam needs us more than you ever did. I let the silence hold it this time. You've said that sentence to me my entire life like it was a compliment. It was never a compliment. It was the reason I slept 14 feet from this family for 10 years while Adam got 2 rooms. It's the reason you used a medical document to take something that was supposed to be mine. I'm not the strong one because you raised me that way. I'm the strong one because none of you ever gave me a choice. My father tried first. We did what we thought was right for this family. You did what was easiest for Adam, I said. There's a difference, and I think some part of you has always known it. You've always twisted things to make yourself the victim, my mother said. And I could hear the old script in her voice, the one that had worked on me for 35 years. You had a roof. You had food. Some children have far less, Evelyn. That's not the standard you held yourselves to with Adam, I said. You didn't ask if he had enough. You asked what more you could give him. I'm not asking you to feel guilty about loving him. I'm asking you to stop pretending the math was ever equal. Gerald set his fork down entirely now, no longer pretending to eat. Beside him, Diane had gone very still, the way people do when they realize they're witnessing something they'll be repeating for years. Leonard, Diane said quietly, just loud enough to carry. Is this true? The cabin? My father didn't answer her. That silence answered for him. Adam stood up behind me. For a moment, I braced for him to defend them one more time, the way he always had. He didn't. She's telling the truth, he said, quiet at first, then steadier. I knew something happened with the cabin paperwork. I didn't ask questions because I didn't want the answer. He looked at our parents, and for the first time in his life, I watched him choose to be uncomfortable instead of protected. I've spent my whole life letting you two hand me things Evelyn had to earn twice over. That's on me too. But it's on you first. My mother's composure finally broke, not into anger, but into something smaller. We were trying to protect this family. You were protecting an idea of this family, I said. One where I don't get to matter as much as he does. That idea is over. I'm not angry that you love Adam. I'm asking you to finally admit you never loved us equally and stop pretending that admitting it will destroy something worth saving. Aunt Carol reached over and took my hand under the table, the first real gesture of loyalty I'd felt from that side of the family in months. Denise was crying quietly 2 seats down. Nobody applauded, nobody needed to. The room had already decided, in the space of a few minutes, which version of the Brooks family it had actually been watching for 40 years. I didn't stay for cake. Renata's formal dispute moved forward over the following weeks, and eventually the cabin transfer was corrected. Not through revenge, just through the plain weight of what had actually been signed and what hadn't. Adam reached out on his own, without our parents involved, and told me he wanted his half handled the way our grandmother had actually intended. No more, no less. My restaurant client called again about 6 weeks later. Word travels in Omaha the way it travels in every mid-sized city. She'd heard a version of what happened at that party from a mutual acquaintance. I should have asked you directly instead of taking your mother's word for anything, she said. We're back on the original project now. I didn't need the apology to move forward. I needed to know I hadn't imagined what she'd done to that relationship too. My parents and I still talk. Less than before and differently. My mother has never said the word sorry the way I once needed her to. But she stopped correcting my memory of the garage, and some days, that's as close to an apology as 35 years of denial is ever going to get me. I stopped waiting for it to be enough. Denise called me the week after the party. No 6-hour delay this time. I should have said something a long time ago, she told me. I always knew the garage wasn't right. I just never wanted to be the one who said it out loud. I told her I understood. I did. I'd spent 35 years being the only one willing to say it, and I finally understood that the silence around me had never been agreement. It had just been fear wearing a nicer outfit. I used to think being the strong one meant absorbing whatever this family needed me to absorb. Quietly. Forever. I don't believe that anymore. Being strong just meant I survived what they asked of me. It never meant I owed them anything else. I still design lobbies. I still call every other Sunday some weeks. I still call every other Sunday some weeks. I still love my family, the complicated, unfinished way you love people who taught you both your worth and your wounds in the same house. But I don't sleep in the garage anymore. Not literally, and not in any of the ways that matter. If this story hit close to home, if you've ever been the strong one in a family that mistook your strength for permission, tell me in the comments. I read every one. And if you want more stories like Evelyn's, subscribe, because this is far from the last family this channel is going to hold accountable. Thanks for listening. I'll see you in the next one.